Is Bitcoin going to go down to $25,000 on July 13th? Well, if you listen to the likes of JP freaking Morgan, then you might actually believe that that is what's going to happen. And it may even end up becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy because so many people fall for the misinformation about what's actually happening with the Grayscale Bitcoin unlocks that are coming up. So in this video, I'm going to dive into this topic, explore what has actually been happening with these unlocks, what it actually means, and try to dispel some of the misinformation that is being peddled around the internet right now. My name's Lark. Every day I make videos talking about cryptocurrency investing. So if that is a topic that you would like to learn some more about, then make sure that you subscribe to the channel. Gently tap on the thumbs up button for the YouTube algorithm. Just gently. Don't tap your screens. There's no need for violence around here. Just a little tap's all it takes. And of course, click on the notification bell to know when I put out a new video. So let's just go ahead and get straight into this topic. So all of this FUD is starting to circulate around the markets that this massive Grayscale unlock is coming up and that is going to tank crypto big time. Here is what is happening. We have 41,000 Bitcoin worth of GBTC shares, which are the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust shares that are going to be unlocked. But what does this actually mean, and is it something that you need to be worried about? Well, there's a lot of people who want you to be worried about it. FUD Master-in-Chief JP Morgan saying that Bitcoin is going to go down to $25,000 as a result of this. Now, as a rule of thumb, JP Morgan, criminal, financial, terrorist organization, I tend not to believe what these proven market manipulators say about the markets. They've been caught rigging markets and manipulating the markets so many times, everyone's lost count. But this is what JP Morgan thinks, and JP Morgan does tend to represent the mindset of the institutional investor crowd. But it's not just the big institutional firms saying that Bitcoin is going to go down because of the Grayscale unlock. We also have an incredible amount of misinformation floating around. So this is from Celsius CEO Alex Mashinsky. He thinks that this unlock is going to cause a big sell-off. But there's some really big problems with his comments and his reasoning. He says that $20 billion worth of GBT shares are going to become unlocked. That's what he says in his tweet right down here. Problem is, that is categorically not true. $20 billion would equal around 570,000 Bitcoin worth of shares getting unlocked, and that's just not what's happening. Remember, I just told you it's 41,000 Bitcoin that's going to be unlocked in the last 2 weeks of July. That's a lot of Bitcoin, without a doubt, but it sure ain't no 570,000 Bitcoin. So where is he getting these numbers from? That is the $20 billion, by the way, that is all the Bitcoin, all of the Bitcoin that Grayscale holds in its trust. And those are not all getting unlocked. Most of those shares are already unlocked and trading on the market. We're just adding another 41,000 Bitcoin worth of shares. So if you imagine, there's already 530,000, or let's say maybe 520,000, because there are a few shares that are going to get unlocked in August as well. So like 520,000 Bitcoin worth of GBT shares already trading on the markets. So these numbers are really, really off, which makes me think, what's going on here? Alex, a smart guy, he's got a big platform. Is he intentionally misinforming people, or is he shorting the market? You gotta wonder here, right? Because this information, there's been a lot of misinformation going around. Here's another one. According to Cointelegraph, it's 140,000 Bitcoin. And maybe that's where someone like Alex Mashinsky is getting his information from the news outlets, right? Because they're misinforming people too. Cointelegraph is saying that 140,000 Bitcoin are going to be released into the markets, that amount of GBTC shares is about to be released. But that number is not the actual number. According to the website Bybit, they basically track the GBTC unlocks as well as the lockups. And look, you can go and track the unlocks bit by bit. There are news stories covering them all. You can go look at Grayscale's accounts and they show exactly how much Bitcoin went, et cetera, et cetera. From what I can see, 41,386 approximately. Maybe it's off by a few Bitcoin in either direction. But that's about how much Bitcoin is going to be unlocked, worth of, again, GPT shares. Not 140,000. And yet, we've seen so many media outlets repeating the 140,000 number. If we go back to Alex Mashinsky's idea, that would be closer to his $5 billion mark. Now, his general theory here, that funds are going to want to capture the arbitrage trade here, and they're going to short BTC, buy GBTC at a high discount. Maybe that does come to pass, and we're going to talk about shorting much more here in a minute. But again, the numbers are totally off, and we just see a continued misrepresentation of the numbers across all media outlets, ignoring the actual reality of how much Bitcoin is going to be released. That's a big deal, because you see a coordinated effort to misinform you. It's either that all these organizations are working together to misinform you, to short the market, to take the Bitcoin from your pocket and put it into their pockets. So they're getting paid off by the institutions and the big money players like JP Morgan in order to continue spreading this information, or they're just really bad at math and really bad at reporting in the case of Cointelegraph here. So somebody's got to be fact checking these guys, because there's not a whole lot of it going on. This is all publicly available information. You just have to go and do a little bit of digging. Now, the single biggest one-day unlock that is going to happen for the GBTC shares is 16,244 Bitcoin worth of shares happening on July 18th. Now, as this CoinDesk article here references, that is actually back from January 18th, this particular article, and it was about the 16,244 Bitcoin being locked into those contracts. So you can go back and basically trace all the big unlocks that are coming up, because we talked about it a lot when that Bitcoin was being bought and being locked up on the markets. Now, by the way, if you want to stay up to date with everything happening in the crypto space, you got to check out Wealth Mastery. It's the weekly investor report that my team and I are putting together. Every single issue, you're going to get the latest token sales, the latest airdrops, a deep dive altcoin report on a hot altcoin, a step-by-step DeFi tutorial on the latest, hottest DeFi farms, top-tier technical analysis, and much, much more, all for less than $10 a week, making this the most value-packed and at the same time the most affordable investor report on the market. Click on the link down below me here in the description where you can learn more about becoming a member today. Now let's move on to the next point here. As you notice, I keep saying shares, 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 shares. The main point I want to drive home here, no spot Bitcoin is being released onto the market. So that 41,000 and 41,000 Bitcoin and some change, it's not being handed back to investors like, here's your 41,000 Bitcoin back. They're getting their Bitcoin trust shares unlocked so they can now go trade those on the stock markets. So when Grayscale investors bring Bitcoin in to Grayscale, they're forced into a 6-month lockup period. So those guys we just covered in that news article who locked up their Bitcoin on January 18th are getting unlocked on July 18th. So they're getting their shares, their stocks, right? That's a very, very important distinction. There will be no spot Bitcoin being market dumped on Coinbase or anything like that to drive the price down. So will the share unlocks cause a catastrophic price crash for Bitcoin? Again, no spot Bitcoin being released to the market. I just can't emphasize that point enough. So here's some curious points for you to consider. There were around 35,000 Bitcoin worth of shares unlocked June 20th to June 23rd, during which period Bitcoin also dropped by 20%. Now, what's going on here? Is the tail wagging the dog or the dog wagging the tail? Because all of this also coincided with the biggest China FUD news basically that we've had in years, a culmination of, the miner exodus, and they're getting kicked out of Sichuan, they're getting kicked out everywhere. Massive, massive FUD during that time. Big miner sell-off too. A lot of Chinese miners were selling because they had to fund going to Texas or going to Kazakhstan or wherever else they might have been going to. That also happened to coincide with the lowest price point so far during this entire market correction for Bitcoin. Interesting bit of facts here for you. Ready for some more fun numbers? December 19th to the 21st saw 15,000 BTC shares being released. The price dropped 10% on those days. Big releases in early February, though, didn't have much of an impact. There were some days we could see where there was a sell-off on bigger release days, but for the most part, February, the first half of February, was dictated completely by Elon Musk tweeting about Bitcoin, Tesla buying Bitcoin that have pumped the markets higher. So that kind of negated any shorting efforts that came in here, that would have come in here. Now, March 22nd and March 24th, we saw 17,000 GBT shares being released. The price of Bitcoin dropped 14% at that time. So we're seeing a strong correlation here between drops in prices of Bitcoin and releases of GBTC shares. And of course, the big one you have to keep in mind from April 14th, that's the top for Bitcoin. That was when Bitcoin was at $65,000 until May 20th. That was one day post the first major sell-off bottom, which happened on May 19th. So that's when Bitcoin went down to like $29,000. We did get a slightly lower low more recently, but that was the first big sell-off's bottom. So we had a total of 77,000 Bitcoin worth of GBTC shares that were released during that 1 month period. The single biggest day released during that period, you're going to love this, May 20th. That's one day after the price bottom at $29,000. Massive GBTC release, Bitcoin basically hits the bottom. Now that is some pretty interesting stuff when you start to break down the numbers of how the price actually moved, when the price actually moved, in relation to the releases of these GBTC shares. Now here's the questions we need to think about. Was somebody shorting the markets in advance of these releases, right? Did the institutions come in and say, okay, these releases are coming, we need to start shorting the market? I mean, come on, the biggest GBTC release happened on the 20th, the day before we had the price bottom, basically. Now that mega unlock of 77,000 Bitcoin corresponds to a 50% drop in Bitcoin's price over that time. Now, is it possible? This is just correlation. None of this matters. It's just a coincidence, Lark. This is not causation. This is not why it happened. Yes, obviously that's possible. I'm not saying that it isn't, but you have to admit, this is all very suspiciously timed, isn't it? Big GBTC releases, big dumps in the price, right? And so thinking forward, what does that mean for us? And again, remember, no actual Bitcoin is being released into the market, and yet the correlation that we're seeing between these GBTC share unlocks and the dumping of Bitcoin's price pretty gosh darn strong in 2021. Why are the markets dumping in unison with these unlocks if we're not having spot Bitcoin being dumped? Remember, these are shares trading on the stock market for a trust. What's going on? Go back to JP Morgan. Go back to the misinformation. Go back to the FUD. Go back to those thoughts at the start of the video. We have big market manipulators shorting the market big time before these major releases. It's likely as well that they're going to start shorting the 41,000 Bitcoin shares unlock in late July. Now, perhaps that's not the case this time. I want to point this out. We are, as regular people, playing checkers, but the people playing us right? The big market institutional manipulators, they're playing 4D chess, man. They're paying off people over here. They're dropping news stories over here. They're pushing FUD over here. They're reiterating FUD from years ago over here. They're spreading misinformation all over the place. It's a tough game to play for the regular retail investor. They're trying to shake you out. That is the game. Now, we recently got our spring for the Wyckoff accumulation pattern. But is that a fake out? Are they faking us out? Are they trying to make us bullish right before they dump the market on us again? Or is this the fake out? Is the Wyckoff really going to play out? And the fake out is that we're going to think that they're going to dump the price again on this GBTC release, which is one of the basically last releases of GBTC. By the way, I want to point that out. So there's going to be a little bit more released in August, but this is the last big release for the foreseeable future. Is that the fake out? They've shorted all the ones before. They're not going to short this one. They're going to long this one. Maybe. Right? Remember, we're playing a game here with people whose entire job, their entire livelihoods is manipulating markets and rigging markets. But here's an interesting point to consider as well. GBTC investors, the ones, for example, who bought on January 18th, locked their Bitcoin in the GBTC trust, they bought Bitcoin at around $36,000 in order to lock it into that trust. Those people right now are underwater by quite a bit. Now it's made more painful because of the price of Bitcoin right now, $33,000, whatever, right? So they're underwater there. They're also underwater because the GBTC shares are currently trading at around a 10% discount to the spot price, right? So they're already down about 20% versus the spot price of Bitcoin. And a lot of these guys borrowed Bitcoin from firms like BlockFi, so they now need to repay loans denominated in Bitcoin in order to, pay back these guys, right? So, and they have interests that they need to pay on the GBTC premiums. So a lot of these guys who were coming in thinking they were going to make some easy money are not making easy money. Now, many of these firms, they came in thinking that they were going to run this amazing arbitrage trade because back when they put Bitcoin into the trust, it was trading at like a 30 to 40% premium above the spot price of Bitcoin. So let's say that, the guys who put their Bitcoin in at $36,000, the GBTC trust was actually making it closer to $50,000. So these guys came in and looked like, wow, we're going to make 30% profits basically for doing nothing. Borrow some Bitcoin here, put it here, 6 months time, cash out, 30% gains, bada bing, bada boom, we're geniuses. That's not the case now for these institutional firms. Some of them are going to be facing some pretty damn heavy losses because remember, they've put in hundreds of millions to billions of dollars. They got a lot of money on the line. They're at heavy losses right now. Some of these guys are going to be down by $400-500 million. Some are going to be down $40-50 million. What's the solution to their problem? Spread FUD, spread misinformation, get people to panic, sell, to drop the prices and short the fricking market. And then, of course, they buy the dips and accumulate then, and then of course they can sell back later on. Final thoughts in all of this mess. In theory, a GBTC release should have no real impact on the spot prices for Bitcoin because this is a trust product, it's not an ETF product. But this market, like all markets, heavily manipulated. The GBTC product is pretty complex, the lockup periods and the premiums and the discounts and all this stuff. So most investors don't really understand it. So you can have someone like JP Morgan come out and say, oh, something, Grayscale unlocks bad, Bitcoin going down. And most people will believe that narrative because they think, well, those guys wear suits. They must be really, really intelligent. They must be smarter than me. They're market manipulators. They prey on people by spreading this exact kind of misinformation about what's going on right now. Now, of course, we do have to admit that there has been a very strong correlation between these unlocks and the price going down. Probably because of the massive shorting that we've seen from these institutional players. Also, a Bitcoin ETF is going to literally fix this problem. When we have a Bitcoin ETF, we're not going to have the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust arbitrage play happening. All this drama, the unlocks, all this stuff going on, you're just not going to have to worry about it because it's literally not going to be a thing with a Bitcoin ETF, a product that trades at the market price of Bitcoin, unlike these trust shares. I mean, really, who's going to buy a Grayscale Bitcoin Trust share when you have a Bitcoin ETF? In fact, I think that the release of Bitcoin ETFs in Canada is probably a big factor in why Grayscale's Bitcoin Trust has been trading at a discount, meaning that all these guys are been in losses for a long time. So anyway, the SEC, they got to sort this out at some point. They got to get, I guess, Bitcoin ETFs out in America at some point. Good news here for you. This is important. After July's big unlocks, so that 41,000 Bitcoin worth of unlocks that's happening over the last 2 weeks of July, the biggest sell-off date's on January 18th, or the biggest unlock date, I should say, is on January 18th. After that, we're basically in the clear. Now, there is a few unlocks that are going to happen in early August and throughout August, but we're talking maybe 15,000 Bitcoin worth of unlocks for all that time period is nothing compared with the late July unlocks, or of course the unlocks that we've seen in that sort of 4-week period, mid-April to mid-May. So maybe that's it. Maybe August is going to be a super, super bullish month as a result of this, as all this institutional shorting, the GBTC thing, ends. Now, what is old Lark doing about all of this nonsense that I just described? I'm just doing what I always do, to be honest. It's an interesting story. I think it's a story that you should be aware of so that you don't fall for the market manipulators' FUD, but you do have to understand that these guys are out there manipulating the market, shorting the market. They're quite often very successful at doing that. I'm just going to keep buying Bitcoin on a regular basis, stacking sats and chilling as I usually do. And if the market manipulators do force the price of Bitcoin back down again, then I'm going to buy more Bitcoin. That's it. That's how it goes, guys. Anyway, those, of course, are just my 2 Satoshis. What do you think? Is this whole Grayscale Bitcoin shares trust thing worrying you? Is this something that's on your radar, or are you just like, whatever, man, I'm just going to stack some sats, I'm going to chill. Wall Street institutions, they're going to do what they're going to do. I just live that sat stacking life and chilling. Let me know down below in the comment section. Thanks so much for watching today's video, and peace out until next time.